that heat pump will work in your house at -20. And if you don't believe me, you're a science denier. Marty up north, welcome back. Hey, we've got a hell of a week going on here in Canada. You're a science denier if you don't trust the science, as we're told. Now we're running into some contention here with heat pumps and carbon taxes and how this all works. Now, we recently saw with the Liberal government giving a giant tax break to people who in the eastern Atlantic provinces are using something that's far worse for the environment. We've all kind of agreed on this. Heating oil is worse as a pollutant and also produces more CO2. I don't usually in myself put CO2 in the category of pollutants because it's a natural element that we have on this planet. It's something that we need, we require in our atmosphere. But the argument is that there's too much and they're adding too much of it. And that's the case here. Now, they're giving a tax break to these Atlantic Canadians, not because of any other reason except for it looks like politically they were going to shift from the Liberal Party. Now they're backpedaling on this whole thing and telling people to get heat pumps. Anyway, give me your 2 cents on this whole thing.
Oh boy, where to unfold that? Well, yeah. So first of all, I asked this question today. You know, why are we suddenly talking about heat pumps, right? Like heat pumps have been around for, and I didn't ask you, I asked it on Twitter, but I mean, heat pumps in one form or another have been around for 50 years, longer than that. I mean, a refrigerator is a heat pump. I admit that. I admit that. And, but it's one of those things. It's not a new technology, but it's a technology that's being pushed right now. And quite simply speaking, like in life, if technologies are good and ideas are good, and by being good, it's a combination of things. Good means it's practical, it can be built, it can be serviced, it can be maintained, it's efficient, it's cost effective. Things that are good catch on. Things that aren't good don't catch on. So I have to put heat pumps in that whole category of things that never caught on for many reasons. And
depends.
You and
I think depends is the answer to that. If you live in Texas, it makes a lot of sense to have a heat pump.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
Excellent clarification. Yeah, I'm talking in a Canadian context. Generally speaking, I'm talking in a Canadian context.
So for what I'm referring to there is you don't have to have a dual system. If you live in Texas, where you'd have a natural gas furnace and then you'd have a AC system for the summer, you have a heat pump system that's a dual heat pump. It can go either way because of the valving in it, and you can run heat in the winter and you can run cool in the summer, and that makes a lot of sense. But if you live in a climate where the summers are quite moderate and the winters are in the -20s, they're not very efficient.
No, and in fact, I posted it. You know, it was such an annoying topic this week for me that I actually woke up this morning, did a couple of graphics, and posted a tweet on the subject. And we don't want to get into it in huge details, but heat pumps are that weird diagram. You know, everybody knows this. I mean, if you have an object that's at 10 degrees and an object that's at 30 degrees and they touch each other, eventually both objects will be at 20. Mm-hmm. And that's the law of conservation of energy. But the law of conservation of energy would say that the objects could technically end up at one at 5 and one at 35. But we all know this doesn't happen because heat flows in one direction only.
That's right.
And so heat flows from the hot side to the cold side. But a heat pump reverses that, and using mechanical energy to do it. And so it's compressing a fluid, a heat medium, a refrigerant, whether it's your argon or your freon or your propane or whatever, and it's using mechanical energy to extract heat out of the air. And if the if the air in Canada is -30 or -25 or depending on the region, it's so cold there's hardly any heat in there. And people say, well, my heat pump still works at -30. It's like, it's functioning, but it's probably not doing a lot of work, and it's being backed up by something electric or some other form of heat. It's like somebody who says, you know, oh, my calculator, my solar calculator still works when it's dark outside. It's like, yeah, it still works, but it's
because there's a battery in it as well.
There's a battery in there. Exactly. So And
well, just to clarify, so because I looked this up, so a lot of the heat pumps that get put into northern regions to subsidize the fact that it can't actually pull that much heat out of the cold air, they actually just run a heater element, an electric heater element. You might as well just have one of those little space heaters in your home that you plug into an outlet, because that's what it is. And those are quite costly, actually. They're not very cheap to run, so it's not really saving you any money in the long run.
And if you live in, like you live in British Columbia, so you guys have some relatively cheap power. You're making electricity using hydro. So any device like a heat pump that relies on electricity, there's an advantage there. I live in Alberta. We burn natural gas to make electricity, or in some cases coal. So am I going to burn natural gas to make electricity and then use the electricity to drive a pump to try and extract heat? Nah, you're getting too complicated. Skip all that middle stuff and just start the fire with the furnace on natural gas in your and it's a distraction. It was the whole heat pump thing, I think we can all agree, became a distraction by the Liberals. They wanted an excuse to eliminate the carbon tax in a part of the world where they really depend on votes, and they came up with this fantastic story that we're giving them a tax break to allow Atlantic Canadians to put in heat pumps. So
well, it's ridiculous because they're asking everybody else to put heat pumps in as well, even people who use natural gas in Alberta or British Columbia, anywhere in Canada.
And so in doing this, they all expose themselves as a bunch of hypocrites. Aside from the vote that happened on Monday and everything else, the Liberal Party's a bunch of hypocrites. And I think you and I before this wanted to talk about one guy in particular who's now a super hypocrite in this whole grand scheme of things, and that's Canada's Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, who's the guy. I won't listen to him now. I didn't want to listen to him in the past, like I really didn't, because I think the guy's a nut, And now he has zero credibility. And what he came out and said this week, I'm like, holy smokes! Again, where does this craziness end?
Well, I'm going to get to that clip in a second, but there's the vote. So the vote that happened was the Conservative Party put forward a motion to basically make it fair across the board for all Canadians. Anyone who's heating their home and pays carbon tax on that heat, they're going to eliminate that carbon tax, take it off for the 3 years that the Liberals are giving to their constituents only in Atlantic Canada. So there was a bunch of Liberal MPs that sold out their people and voted out against their own constituents in this vote, which I'm sure upset a lot of people in this. And now they're calling it the Carbon Tax Coalition. This is the new logo for that, and that's because the Bloc Québécois came out in support of the Liberals and formed a coalition to this again.
Clyde, I was shocked by this. I mean, a great logo, by the way. Like that's catchy as hell. That's going to be that is what happened. Carbon Tax Coalition. There's so much wrong with what that vote though, right? Deep down, I mean, I wasn't even thinking that at best, I might have thought that the Bloc Québécois would abstain from voting. I mean, remember when we talked about this last week? Yeah, the vote, I kind of knew the vote. It's non-binding. It was the Conservatives passed it. I saw it as a win-win for us either way. I mean, if we won the vote, that's great. Then I would have had a reduction in my carbon tax. But if I lose the vote, then the Liberals come out as hypocrites, which they do. So I'm going to go with that win. I did get a win. For your viewers, right? They know the vote didn't. The vote was defeated, and the carbon tax on heating fuel stays. And the reason the vote was defeated was because the Bloc and the Bloc, which is a separatist party in this country, in a province that's already exempt from carbon taxes because of a special deal with Ottawa, that party that had nothing to gain or lose in this vote sided with the Liberals in a big FU to the rest of the country. So I didn't see that coming. And I understand that that group is separatist. If they wanted to aggravate the rest of Canada and have the rest of Canada start chanting, "Get the hell out," they succeeded.
Oh, they sure did. Yeah, I've been hearing that all week.
Yeah. Because I mean, and even I, you're people know this. I have a bit of a French accent. I do speak French, and I have what I call cousins out in Eastern Canada, and I've defended them for years and years. I've always defended them, but I'm in the last 5-6 years, I've been incapable of defending Eastern Canada, Quebec in particular. I can't defend them anymore. So you want to be your own province? Go ahead. And you think you can stand on your own? I'll encourage you. Prove it. Prove it. Sure. Show it to us. Show me that you can be a standalone province without transfer payments from. I mean, these are all the things that piss me off. Like they claim to be green. They claim that they don't. That the carbon tax needs to exist. But then when you look at Quebec, they're importing oil from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, and they're buying more F-150 trucks than Alberta and Saskatchewan put together. So, yeah, whatever, boys, go do your thing.
It makes me wonder if there were a referendum tomorrow for the rest of Canadians to kick them out, how that would go. I mean, the anger is really definitely pointed at them right now, especially with this and the fact that they're allowing for this to happen. Yeah,
I'm sure your viewers can sense it right now. I'm angry. I am angry. I was gone this weekend. I went away Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Came out of the bush on Monday afternoon. Turned on the radio by the time I got to Lake Louise, where I finally get satellite service, and I see the results of the vote. And I was upset at first when when you just hear the story and it says the vote was defeated. I'm like, okay, it was defeated. But then I looked into why, and I'm like, holy shit, the Bloc aligned with them. Wow. So that angered me. Then I get
the NDP I get home and actually vowed to and voted alongside the Conservatives on this, so that they did
what they said they would do. Which
the Liberals had to get the Bloc. It was incredible that they were able to pull that out, especially since the Quebecers are exempt from this carbon tax largely exempt. Absolutely. And then what else happened in that vote? There was
remember I think it must have been about 3 weeks ago on this show. We talked briefly about prior to all this, the Newfoundland MP, Ken McDonald, who had on an earlier motion had voted against his party, but I guess it didn't matter in that one. He that's the gentleman from Newfoundland who was standing up for his constituents, and he's one of the reasons that they lifted the carbon tax in Newfoundland or in Atlantic Canada. And then come this vote, he reversed his position from an earlier vote, and now he voted for the carbon tax. But now that it's been lifted in his province, he voted for it in the rest of the country.
Oh, worse than that.
But not only that, worse than that, because some people will say it was a bit of an accident that he was adjusting his glasses and doing this when he was adjusting his glasses. I don't know, Ken. I think you were trying to send a signal across the floor to the Conservatives. But Ken, while you were doing that, you're sending a pretty clear message to the rest of Canada, and I don't appreciate what you did there, Ken. I really don't.
Well, with the rest of his backbenchers there, all scowling and laughing, you could tell that it was an intentional thing.
And I mean, the fact that here in my own province we only have 2 Liberal MPs and they voted for the carbon tax, that doesn't surprise me, but that also pisses me off. So that whole vote on Monday was I should have turned around, gone back in the bush, but anyways, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now my big issue this week was with Stephen Guilbeault himself, and something that he said really kind of triggered a response in me. Here's a tweet from Noe Chartier. He's basically just showing Guilbeault what he said on the House of Commons here.
Mr. Speaker, so I was sitting. I'm a Liberal and a proud Socialist, Mr. Speaker, but this reminds me of.
I mean, right there, that's enough. But listen to the whole message here.
Can you hear it, Clyde? I couldn't hear it.
Oh, you couldn't hear that?
Just making double checking in case if I can't hear it, maybe your viewers can't hear it.
Oh, I'm seeing it come across.
A certain quote from Prime Minister Harper, who talked about the fight against climate change as a socialist plot. That's what the Conservative Party, and here it is. You have it again, Mr. Speaker. They do not believe that climate change is an issue. They do not believe we should do anything about it. They oppose electrification of transportation. They oppose deals like Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Nordvolt. They oppose wind development off the shores of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan to fight climate change. They have no plan for the economy. They have no plan for the future of Canada. Bravo!
So, because you couldn't hear it, I don't know. I'm having a technical difficulty here. I know that that it's picking up on the audio on this end. But he came up and he said, "I'm a proud socialist." And not only that, he brought up this this notion that Stephen Harper had said years back that climate change was a socialist plot. Now, my response to this was, why is it that every action that this government gives against climate change is to limit civil liberties or infringe on property rights? When their only fix for climate change that they offer is socialism, it sure looks like a socialist plot. At this point, there are tons of things that we could be doing for the sake of the environment and climate that would not come across as taking people's property, infringing on people's rights, stepping on people's civil liberties, in interfering in the marketplace. All of these things, they don't need to do that, but they sure are doing it. And now we're getting reports that none of their measures are actually doing anything good.
They're not, right? Who gave that? That was a meeting yesterday or the day before, where somebody was reporting to a parliamentary committee saying we were missing all our targets. In fact, we're missing our targets when you measure them on by ourselves. But if you compare us to the rest of the world as a percentage of the rest of the world, we look like we're meeting our targets. But that's not because we're meeting our targets. That's because everybody else in the world is far exceeding their targets. So, you know, as on the world scale, Canada looks like our contribution of emissions is going down, but it's not going down. It's staying steady. But the Chinese are increasing theirs so rapidly that we look good. No, Guilbeault scares me. He scares me for he scares me for one really good reason, actually. And I'll give him a credit, but I'm sure it's not the credit he's hoping. He is effective. He is effective. And that scares me. He is able to rally troops. He's an expert shit disturber. I mean, he was with Greenpeace and other groups like that, and Equiterre and groups like that for years. So he is good at rallying people around a cause. And I think his cause is bullshit, but he's good at rallying people to his cause, and that scares me. And I think he's remarkably agile at working the government too, because some of the other ministers, like, they don't scare me at all because they're so inefficient. They don't know how anything works. They're very dumb individuals. Guilbeault is smart and effective, and that's really scary to me. He's a very scary guy.
And a complete hypocrite, because he's telling people that they need to pay their taxes in order to save the world, the planet, when he's someone who doesn't pay his taxes himself. I have this article from the Western Standard talking about as a cabinet minister, Guilbeault receives an annual salary of $287,400 and a $2,000 car allowance. And I'm gonna guess that's not a Tesla. It's probably one of those V8s that drives him around all the time. However, Guilbeault had revealed 2 years ago that he had a significant unpaid tax bill, which he disclosed under the public declaration of liabilities of $10,000 or more. Now, I didn't go into the details of what he owed. Of course, he didn't want to do that, but $10,000 or more, that's a huge tax bill to just skip on while trying to tell people that they're going to have to pay more taxes in Canada.
They're all the same way. I mean, the socialists are typically, you know, Marxists and communists, and socialists are some of the worst hypocrites. I mean, it's do as I say, not as I do. And I think Guilbeault is probably a classic example. They're all like that. I mean, he's done the bullshit propaganda of pretending to travel by train between Montreal and Quebec City. I travel by train between Montreal and Quebec City. It's faster than going by plane, but I guarantee you he's traveling all over the world by plane. By the way, I think that's a typo on whoever whoever wrote that article, the ministers get something like a $2,000 a month car allowance. I mean, they get a huge car allowance. And yeah, I guarantee, and they don't even use it, most of them, because they get chauffeurs that come pick them up, you know, unless of course you're Chrystia Freeland, then you're skiing to work every day or taking the bus, or if you're Trudeau, you're taking a bus, but you're still bringing your 6 photographers and your bodyguards.
Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah, he's a scary dude. And I one thing that also scares me is I checked last week. I check this every week. I mean, the little stunt that the Liberals pulled last week, we haven't seen the effects of an effect in the polls for them. It hasn't diminished their polling. I think it will after next week. But just for fun, I went to see which Liberals are still polling and would still win. And Guilbeault is the guy who apparently would, right now, if there was an election tomorrow, would still win his riding. That's downright scary. Scary.
Well, it's terrifying that people still believe in that stuff. But I mean, some people are gullible, and socialism is one of those things that it really brings people in, and it's something that I think the environmentalism movement has really brought in. There's a book by James Delingpole that was released a bunch of years ago. It's called Watermelons: The Green Movement's True Colors by James Delingpole. A little thing from the back of the book here. If carbon dioxide is harmless for the planet and is harmless planet food, and catastrophic man-made global warming is a myth, why are billions of dollars being squandered in the name of combating climate change? Watermelons tells the shocking story of how an unholy mix of junk science, green hype, corporate greed, and political opportunism led the biggest and most expensive outbreak of mass hysteria in history. James Delingpole is the best-selling author and blogger who helped expose the climate scandal. You remember ClimateGate, all that stuff, to hide the temperatures, hide the drops in temperatures. Yeah, in Watermelons, he uncovers the cast of characters involved in their motives and methods and their underlying agenda. Green on the outside, red on the inside. The liberty-loathing, humanity-hating watermelons of the modern environmental movement do not want to save the world. They want to rule it. That's the whole point here. And this is why we see stuff in our agricultural sector where they're just telling people, not let's get more efficient with our stuff. Just reduce the amount of fertilizers that you use, reduce the amount of nitrogens, all this stuff. Why? So we can use more land in order to grow our crops. It's inefficiency, and it's not about it's about bankrupting farmers. It's not about improving efficiency and being better for the planet, in my opinion.
No. Hey, can I tell you a weird story? Just because, I don't know, you made me think of that. But this weekend I went hiking this weekend. I stayed at a cabin. In the woods. It's a cabin that used to belong to Parks Canada. It was a patrol cabin, and now it's been converted, and to try and make a few bucks, they're renting out the cabin. But in order to do that, they made the cabin quote unquote safer. And so they took out the wood stove out of the cabin and they replaced it with a propane stove oven in there. And they did that about 2-3 years ago. And it's only been 2 or 3 years now, and the cabin is rotting. And when you look at the notes, and people are making comments about that, and what people don't understand is that when they got rid of that wood stove was providing a nice dry heat to the cabin, and it was all exhausted up to the top of the roof. But then when they took out that wood stove and put a propane stove in there, the product of combustion on a propane stove is carbon dioxide and water vapor. In that cabin now, people are going in there all winter long. There's no ventilation. They're turning on that stove and those little lamps and everything else, and the whole inside of that cabin is rotting. So when people don't understand physics or science or biology or geology, they make stupid mistakes like that. And you know, at the beginning of your show, you made a joke about the science, right? I think your viewers know Marty's an engineer. My degree is a degree in applied science. And I love when guys like Guilbeault or when you point out all sorts of people who say to you and I, follow the science. I wish they would follow the science, because yeah, you're right. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It's not listed as a pollutant anywhere in any organization on the planet. Does not list carbon dioxide as a pollutant. They might have started putting it as a pollutant in the last few years to try and adjust their narrative, but I guarantee you, prior to 2010, there's no organization in the world, not NOSHA, nowhere, that listed carbon dioxide as a pollutant.
They actually call it an emission. They include it in emissions. So, and this is a way of getting around that, because it's not a toxic substance. It's nothing like that. It's not like carbon monoxide, which can harm people. It's not like other tars and
so could carbon dioxide. I mean, back to my story of the tent. That tent is so tight in there. When I was in that, or not the tent, that cabin, I'm like, holy shit, guys, you got to open these windows, man, because we're going to kill ourselves if we run this propane stove and all these lamps in this building without opening a door. We're going to choke ourselves to death is what we're going to do. So let's move on to another topic. I hate Stephen Guilbeault. I hate Stephen Guilbeault. Let's just put it that way. And well, let's finish it real quick. So what's he proposing to do? What was the ugly thing that he was proposing to do this week? He just got caught off guard and he made a speech in the House of Commons. Or is he doubling down on the carbon tax? He
was running defense on the carbon tax.
And
basically he has no justification for if he's this grandiose savior of the planet. He has no justification for why they're doing carve-outs for people in Atlantic Canada. It doesn't make sense. It's completely against what he believes in and what he says and what he keeps telling people. We know it's political in nature, and that's all it is. And he's trying to backpedal on that one, and throw the finger out there and tell people that it's what's implied there is that you're a conspiracy theorist if you think that this is a socialist plot, even though he's saying he's a proud socialist. And it shows. It definitely shows in his policy. But let's move on. We'll move on. Here's a funny little one that came. Oh, you look like
I'm trying to think how you're gonna are you gonna segue into socialist, because we had some socialist moments here in Alberta this week. But what's your socialist moment?
Before we get to that, I wanted to talk about a little bit of a cat fight in media, and this is funny, and this is kind of it showcases just how poor our media has become in Canada. And we like to make fun of American style media, but this is Rachel Gilmore pointing out the fact that Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anita Poilievre, is following a particular account on Twitter that she happens to disagree with. The account effectively is an anti-LGBTQ hate, whatever, epithets that they throw out there. The account is called Libs of TikTok. If anybody's ever tuned into that account, it's somebody who actually just takes liberals on TikTok and then reposts them on...
It's a lady. I think it's a minority lady, isn't he? She's the lady who does it is what I would call a visible minority, I think.
From what I understand, yeah.
The account holder. Fantastic account. Like, great account. Absolutely
great. Oh, it's a great account because they just showcase what the crazy liberals are doing on TikTok.
They don't even... Yeah, there's no critique. There's no comment. They just put the posts up there, and then you judge for yourself. And it's pretty obvious that they're over the top crazy.
It's really good. So apparently, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network reposted Rachel Gilmore, who's a tabloid journalist who used to work for the Global News. Anyway, so the Libs of TikTok actually went back at it and said the Anti-Hate Network, which received funding from Trudeau's government, is spending their time and energy policing who the conservative leader of Canada's wife follows on X. Pierre Poilievre is an extremely base dude who destroyed a journalist while eating an apple in a viral video. This is American news commentator, by the way. They don't really concern themselves with Canada that often. They're very angry that Anna Poilievre follows us, so definitely don't follow her and help increase her follower count. I just thought this was funny. It's a little bit of a cat fight.
Way to go, Rachel. Media. You've given Anita and Libs of TikTok more exposure than otherwise. Everybody go follow Libs of TikTok and Anna. Yeah, and again, it's hypocrisy, right? Like we know, you and I know, social media is a bit of a echo chamber. Not a bit of, it's a big echo chamber, and it is an effort to get out of the echo chamber. So I follow. Are you going to criticize me for following Jagmeet Singh? No, I follow Jagmeet Singh. I follow Justin Trudeau. I follow Rachel Notley. And then do I follow funny accounts?
Guilbeault.
Guilbeault. I'll follow Saturday Night Live. I'll follow the Edmonton Oilers. Whatever. Like, who gives a shit what I follow, right? I mean, stop trying this censorship. Like, it's insane.
Well, actually, it's a purity test is what it is, and this is
absolutely.
It's insane. Yeah, it's insane that we've actually come down to that, where we're going to publicly shame people for not being firm enough in their echo chamber.
Now, here, this is a funny, fantastic segue to Danielle Smith meeting with you know who, and you can break the story. But no, let's break the story right now. And I got to remember this bit, right? I got to remember this bit. But there was outrage. Yes, there was outrage in Alberta because the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, has agreed to meet with Tucker Carlson, or not meet with him, to
do a show
be
with
interviewed by him, do a show with him. So, you know, who's an extremely radical left-wing person or right-wing, left-wing person that a conservative might meet with? You know, it goes both ways. But so people are outraged. Anyways, play the clip if you have to. But I just, maybe people aren't aware of this. When Danielle was questioned about that, she literally said, I meet with people that I disagree with. Okay, which is great. And she wasn't saying she disagrees with Tucker Carlson, but she's saying she doesn't only go and meet with people she agrees with. And she says, because if she did, she would never meet with the CBC. I was like, ooh, that was a hard burn. So Danielle burned the CBC by saying that in a press conference. Yeah, no, here in Canada, people are, the one with Danielle's not flying in Alberta. Nobody gives a shit about. The people who are complaining about Danielle Smith meeting with Tucker Carlson are the washed up NDP, the washed up socialists, you know, Rachel Notley and Sarah Hoffman and all of them. Get bent. Danielle will go and meet, and I look forward to Danielle talking to Tucker. I'm not sure what the format is. I'm not sure if they're doing a live interview or, you know. Oh,
well, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so, let's get in. Sure.
Rachel Notley put out a tweet with her doing a little speech here. Smith has restated her intent to meet with extremist Tucker Carlson. Now he's an extremist, and of course, this is the kind of rhetoric from the left. The stuff that you know, news reporters are throwing at Pierre Poilievre every time he speaks, like, you're pulling a playbook out of the Trump a page out of the Trump playbook. What we hear all the time is you can't meet with these people you agree with because that person is extreme. Everybody who's extreme, who's against you. It's the, you know, the magical, what is it, Godwin's law, when you get to an argument and at some point when somebody pulls out and compares you to when you compare the other person to Hitler, right? That's really what it comes down to, is this kind of argumentation. And this was funny, and unfortunately the audio is not working with you, Marty, but you've seen this clip, and this is a tweet that you've put out, this Sarah Hoffman character. But I'll play this 45 seconds. You've heard this, so the audience can hear this.
Will the Premier please reconsider and cancel her conversation with Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson has called women extremely primitive. He said that we need to be quiet and do what we're told. Praised Vladimir Putin. He's insulted the president of Ukraine, and he's promoted the debunked conspiracy theory that Ukraine was producing biological weapons. Tucker Carlson has said many offensive things about newcomers. He spouted racist tropes. The Premier is welcoming the hateful views of Tucker Carlson, and this sends a very dangerous message to all Albertans. His extreme views were not fit for prime time. They weren't fit to be on the air at any time. Will the Premier please reconsider and cancel her conversation with Tucker Carlson?
We're talking about an individual who has the largest podcast audience probably in the world, and that's an opportunity for us.
That's the part that gets me. This is a podcaster that has the largest audience, one of the largest audiences in the world. This is a huge opportunity for us. Why would we turn this down because a couple of people in the legislature are offended at the things that he has to say, and obviously straw manning his position entirely?
No, I'm trying to think of, again, I'm at a loss. I'm trying to think who would be an equivalent. I mean, there's a lot of crazy left-wing podcasters and journalists.
Well, yeah, if like Rachel Maddow came out and met with David Eby, you know, that kind of thing. Would we be upset? Would that be a thing?
That it's amplifying Rachel or amplifying David?
Yeah, no, like Keith Olbermann goes and meets with the new NDP premier of Manitoba, that kind of thing.
No,
who cares?
It's a good step. Yeah, who cares? I look forward to this one, and hopefully, and like I said, hopefully you get Danielle on this show, because she's doing great things here in Alberta. This week, she quietly did. Last week she did something nice. She passed Alberta passed a law that any future tax increases or any consideration for something like a sales tax or whatever needs a referendum. And then people, again, the left was all upset about that. I'm like, she gave people power, not herself. She didn't give herself power. She didn't give anybody else power. She gave the people the power. So, and people are upset that she's giving power to the people. I'm like, that's insane. That's like, you're so polarized and so, you're looking for fault in everything. How could somebody fault that? But apparently they did. The other thing she did this week, and again, this one's a little more quiet, but she is restructuring Alberta Health, which I'm glad she's doing, because Alberta Health was the guys who brought us. Actually, we didn't talk about this one last week. Can we talk about this one really, really quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
Remember a couple of weeks, 2 months ago or 3 months ago, when there was that ruling in Alberta that found that the COVID mandates were illegal? Now, I saw that as a victory, but everybody said, "Oh no, that's a defeat, because now the government knows how to impose mandates next time." No, I was right. So Danielle didn't go down that path. Danielle saw that there was a flaw in that the mandate should have been imposed by the government, the elected officials. So she didn't close the loophole the way people thought by giving future governments more power. She took away the power. So again, she's doing the right thing. That was a fantastic one last week. So the government of Alberta adjusted the Alberta Health Act to take away that, to make sure that in the future a pandemic is dealt with as a provincial emergency by a panel of experts and not by somebody like a doctor at Alberta Health.
Yeah, so we need to get some measures like this about climate alarmism, because this is another one of those scary things that's coming down the pipe, especially with the rulings recently about the public orders under the guise of safety to take guns off the streets or take guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands. And this is something that they can turn around now. Now that they have this in their quiver, they can go and they can take away your car. They can go in and they can take away your home.
Totally.
They can do things as long as they think that this is for the greater good, and that's really scary.
Yeah. I saw. I didn't see it, but I know you interviewed the Canadian Firearms, and you talked about that
Rod
property
Guilbeault,
rights, right?
Yeah.
Rod, you talked to Rod, and you and I talked about that briefly last week. That Bill C-21, when the Supreme Court upheld not Bill C-21, when the Supreme Court upheld the order in council to ban firearms, they were taking away property rights from Canadians. Yes, Canadian, sure, you might be for gun grabs, but it's only a matter of time before the government comes and takes your furnace in your basement, your internal combustion engine, your Sea-Doo, and your two-stroke lawnmower. Done. They're gone. You don't need them anymore. There's a new law, and you're not getting compensated for it. So yeah,
absolutely. And even on the flip side,
people and again, it's not your viewers, because your viewers are fantastic. I look at the comments, and your viewers know it can happen. It's the ones that annoy me are the people go, "Well, that would never happen." I mean, like, that would never happen. My God, like, did you ever think 3 years ago that you would be standing in a restaurant presenting a passport to go in and get your fries? No. Well, it happened. So stop saying that will never happen. Okay. Yeah. Everybody who says that governments will never do something stupid, stop, man. There's too much evidence. It's happened too many times. Governments will always do. You cannot give governments the benefit of the doubt. And I'm actually one of the worst at doing that, giving governments the benefit of the doubt. They will always do the wrong thing. We're seeing it. I mean, you and I could keep talking about 15 stories this week. Did you see the story, how ugly it's getting with Arrive Can?
Oh yeah.
Like Min, what's his name? The guy from Min Chow, whatever, that, like, the guy lied. I mean, the guy gave, we got to do that story, or you've done that story.
Well,
right?
we'll get into it, because Northern Perspective is another channel on YouTube, and they've been covering it intensely, and I'm going to have them on early next week. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to get into, pushing people over to that channel to go check out in its entirety. It is a very in-depth sort of thing. But at the end of the day, what it is embezzlement, like, in the highest levels. And what's coming out is showing that, like, it looks like everybody's in on this one. And it looks like this could take out the entire government.
Well, and even today I made a comment on that. Like, there's a couple of guys that look good. I'm like, no. They look good temporarily, but they're just as bad. The house of cards is collapsing, and everybody's, like, trying to throw everybody else under the bus. And then just because one guy says, oh no, he did it, trust me, he's equally bad. He just doesn't want to get caught. So they're throwing each other under the bus.
It's reminiscent of, like, mob takedowns. What happens is when they take out some of the higher ups, but the lower guys on the higher ups, they start rolling on everybody else, and then it's like everything falls apart. And that's
analogy. Yeah.
That's what it looks like. And they're less organized than the mobs, so this might be easier.
Yeah, because today there was another hearing, and there was two guys that from the Canada the Canada Border Security Agency, and they look like they were good guys. No, they're not good guys. They're good guys because you found two guys willing to squeal on somebody, on their boss. But they're, somebody's going to squeal on them. Fantastic. Yeah. Good analogy.
I can't wait to watch it all go down. But yeah, they're trying to bury it. You're not hearing a lot about it in the news.
If they start knocking each other off with Tommy guns in the streets, then it's going to get really interesting.
Well, I was actually talking to Cypher from Northern Perspective about that, saying, like, this might get ugly. We don't know. It might. If it gets to the highest levels, you might see some Clinton.
Clyde, I mistakenly said at the beginning of the show that I thought this week had been kind of quiet in politics compared to last week, but no, it's another crazy week. It's a crazy week.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to make do with this cold that I've got. So I'm glad awesome. I made it this whole video with my voice. Marty, where can people find you?
In the woods. No. I just got back. I've actually, before this, hey folks, I know, thanks for all the followers who come to my channel and subscribe. I haven't put a lot of contents, but yes, you can find me on Marty Up North on Twitter and on YouTube. And I'm finishing a nice little video that I'll upload probably tomorrow or the day after. So, hopefully, I really appreciate your fans who come on my side once in a while. Appreciate the comments too. So a lot of people say they like hearing us banter back and forth. And I like that.
It's growing more and more popular. So, I mean, it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, next week we got a crazy week again. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward. And tomorrow's there's a couple of big numbers that are coming out this week. It's the excess deaths come out tomorrow, so I'll be commenting on that. And then there's one number that's really I can't wait to dig my hands into, and it's morbid a little bit, but the statistics on stillbirths is going to come out here right away this week, and I suspect we're going to see something really ugly there. There's something going on with the birth rate in Canada, and it's not good. It's not good. Yeah, so I'm going to dig into that. I dug into heat pumps. Everybody who provided comments on that, appreciate those.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me, and we'll do this again next week.
Always good. Cheers.